evening, Nkem sat in her small
Part
apartment,
2.
staring blankly at the forged birth certificates and the hidden money she had slashed away over the years. The world seemed to close in on her. Her phone buzzed, and she nervously glanced at the screen. It was the aide of the powerful politician who had been promised the Ume baby. She knew this meeting wouldn't be to discuss any easy way out. The politician was furious. Nkem had failed to deliver, and now the scandal surrounding the Ume family had caught the attention of the press. Headlines were calculating, and Nkem's one quiet operation was threatening to expose not just her, but everyone involved, including powerful men in the high places. The next morning, as Nkem left her apartment, she noticed a strange car parked outside her building. A feeling of dread settled in her chest, but she kept walking. As she approached the hospital, her phone rang again. It was Amaka, the lawyer whose baby she had stolen. "Where is my child?" Amaka's voice was sharp, her tone filled with barely contained rage. Nkem's heart raced, but she maintained her calm. "Amaka, I told you, we are doing everything we can to." "Don't lie to me," Amaka shouted. "We have seen the footage. Nkem, you took our baby. We are going to find her, and when we do, you will pay for what you have done." Nkem froze. Her mind scrambled for a response, but nothing came. Amaka hung up, and Nkem stood in the middle of the street, her thoughts swinging. It was only a matter of time now before the authorities came for her. Back at the hospital, the police had intensified their investigation. They were looking into all newborns reported as missing, sick, or diseased under suspicious circumstances. Nkem knew the net was closing in, but she wasn't ready to give up without a fight. She had been too careful for too long to let it all end like this. That evening, she made her way to the random hotel at the edge of the city for a climatic meeting with the politician's aide. The room was dark and smelled of meadow. The aide, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, was already there waiting. "This situation had become a nightmare," the aide said, passing back and forth. "You are supposed to handle this. Now, we have got journalists, activists, and the police all over us. You have put us all in jeopardy." Nkem tried to keep her voice steady. "I will fix it. I just need more time." "You don't have time," he shot back. "The boss is angry. If this goes public, do you think he will let you leave? He will make sure you disappear before you can say a word." Nkem's blood ran cold. She had known the risk all along but never thought it would come to this. She had always been the one in control, carefully playing her hand. Now, she was being backed into a corner, and the consequences were deadly. Meanwhile, at the women's residence, Chuka and Amaka sat at their dining table, revealing the findings from the hospital. Chuka's contacts in the activist community has helped them gain access to the footage and hospital records, and everything pointed to Nkem. Their precious daughter had been taken by a woman they had trusted. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. Amaka, though exhausted from childbirth and the emotional toll, was relentless. She had spent her days contacting every legal connection she had, demanding justice. Her motherly instinct screamed that her child was still alive, somewhere out there, and she was determined to bring her home. "We are not letting her get away with this," Amaka said. Her voice trembled with both fury and depression. "We need to put pressure on the hospital. We need to take this to the media." Chuka nodded. "I will contact the local stations tonight. The more people know, the harder it will be for her to hide." That night, the Umes appeared on live television. Their story sent shockwave through the city. Amaka spoke tearfully about the birth of her baby girl and how she had been taken by Nurse Nkem under the guise of medical care. Chuka spoke passionately about corruption in the system, vowing to uncover the truth and bring their baby home. The public was outraged, and the case quickly became a national scandal. Back at the hospital, the fallout was swift. Nkem faces was plastered on every news station, and the police were closing in on her. The hospital administration was in full crisis mode, distancing themselves from her and trying to mitigate the damage. The once beloved nurse had become the city's most wanted criminal. Nkem knew she couldn't run forever. The network of politicians and criminals she had worked with over the years was starting to crumble, and they would gladly throw her under the bus to save themselves. She had only one option left, which is to disappear. Late one night, she packed a bag with cash, a few belongings, and the forged document she had used to cover all her tracks for years. She planned to flee the country, disappearing into the shadows, never to be seen again. But as she made her way to the train station, she noticed the car that had been following her for days. Before she could react, the car swerved in front of her, and two men stepped out. They were wearing police. Nkem recognized them as the politicians' enforcers. Her heart pounded as they approached her, their expression cold and scary. "You thought you could run?" one of them said. "The boss wants to have a word with you." Nkem backed away, panic setting in. She knew what a word meant in this world. It meant an end, a silencing. She glanced around, searching for an escape, but there was none. Meanwhile, at the police station, the investigation had uncovered enough evidence to issue an arrest warrant for Nkem. The authorities were determined to bring her to justice, and they had tracked her last known location near the train station. Officers were dispatched immediately, hoping to catch her before she could flee the country. Nkem heart raced as she weighed her option. She had no way out. As enforcers closed in, a police siren echoed in the distance, glowing louder. Desperation surged through her. If she didn't act now, she would either end up dead or in prison for life. Suddenly, one of the enforcers grabbed her arm. "Let's go," he glowed, pulling her towards the car. But just as they reached the vehicle, police cars swarmed the area. The enforcers froze, unsure of what to do. Nkem seized the opportunity, ripping her arm free and running towards the officers. "Help me!" she screamed. "They are going to kill me." The police immediately intervened, arresting the enforcers and securing Nkem. She collapsed in tears, realizing that her carefully constructed world had come crashing down. There was no escape now. The next few days were a blow of interrogations and confessions. Nkem knew there was no way out of her crimes. She revealed everything: the politicians, the stolen babies, the bribes. The authorities were stunned by the depth of her network, and the story became even more explosive. The public demanded justice not just for the Ume family, but for every child and mother who had been affected by Nkem's schemes. As Nkem sat in her cold cell, awaiting trial, she thought about all the lives she had destroyed. The weight of her guilt was crushing. There was no redemption for her now, no way to undo the harm she had caused. But the Umays were not done yet. Emeka and Chus continued their relentless search for their baby girl, hoping against hope that they would one day be reunited. As the weeks passed, the media fray surrounding Nkem's arrest only intensified. Families whose babies had gone missing over the years came forward, demanding answers, while politicians who had been involved in Nkem's illegal adoption ring began to distance themselves from the scandal. Investigations were opened into several high-profile figures, but for many, the focus remained on Nkem, the nurse who had betrayed the trust of countless mothers. The trial began under intensive public security. The courtroom was filled with journalists, families of the victims, and members of the public who had followed every twist and turn of the case. Nkem sat in the defendant's chair, a shadow of the woman she once was. Her face was gaunt, her hands trembling as the charges were read aloud. Kidnapping, child trafficking, forgery, fraud. Each count carried a heavy sentence. And as the prosecutor presented evidence of her involvement in the disappearance of over a dozen new babies, it became clear that Nkem had little hope of escaping punishment. The Umays were present every day of the trial, sitting in the front row, their faces etched with mixture of pain and determination. Amaka, though still recovering from the birth of her stolen daughter, had refused to miss a single day. She listened intensely as witness after witness testified against Nkem, describing how their lives had been torn apart by her action. One of the most damning pieces of evidence came from Nkem's own confession. In a desperate bid to save herself from the wrath of politicians who had once protected her, Nkem had admitted to everything. She had detailed how she carefully selected vulnerable mothers, falsified medical records, and smuggled babies out of the hospital to be delivered to wealthy clients. Her confession had been broadcast on every major news channel, and the public outrage was overwhelming. The judge, a stern man with reputation for delivering harsh sentences in cases of child trafficking, listened carefully to both sides. The defense urged that Nkem had been coerced into her action by the powerful men who had funded her operation, painting her as a victim of circumstances. But the prosecutor countered that Nkem had been a willing participant, driven by greed and a complete disregard for the lives of the mothers and children she had harmed. When the time came for the verdict, the courtroom was silent. Nkem sat motionless, her hands clenched tightly in her lap as the judge delivered his judgment. Chai, Nkem, you have violated the most sacred trust placed in you as a nurse and caregiver. Your actions have caused immeasurable pain to families who trusted you with their most precious gift, their children. You manipulated the system, betrayed vulnerable mothers, and trafficked innocent lives for profit. This court has no choice but to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law. He paused, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Chai. The words echoed through the courtroom, and a collective sigh of relief washed over the families in attendance. For the Umays, it was a bittersweet moment. Justice has been served, but their baby girl was still missing. Despite the life sentence handed down to Nkem, their fight was not over. They had not given up hope of finding their daughter and bringing her home. Nkem was led away in handcuffs. The reality of her fate began to sink in. She would spend the rest of her life behind bars, paying for the countless lives she had shattered. There would be no redemption for her, no escape from the consequences of her action. The once respected nurse had become a symbol of greed and betrayal, her name forever associated with the darkest chapter of the hospital's history. Outside the courthouse, the Umays addressed the media. Amaka, with tears in her eyes, spoke on behalf of all the families who had suffered at Nkem's hand. Today, justice was served, but the pain we feel as parents cannot be erased. We will continue to search for our daughter, and we ask everyone with information to come forward. No parent should ever have to go through what we have endured. Chuka stood by her side, holding her tightly. The fight for their daughter's return was far from over, but they were determined to keep going, driven by the hope that one day they would be reunited with their little girl. Nkem's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of danger of unchecked power and greed. The hospital implemented strict protocol to prevent such tragedy from ever happening again, and a national conversation began about the need for reform in the medical and legal system. But for Nkem, there was no future. Her days would be spent in the cold confines of a prison cell, haunted by the faces of the babies she had stolen and the mothers she had betrayed. In the end, she had become a prisoner not just of the law, but of her own guilt. The story ends with a reflection on the impact of Nkem's action, urging viewers to remain vigilant in matters of trust and to advocate for justice for those who cannot fight for themselves. If you have watched this story to this end, please hit the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel. That means a lot to us. Thank you as you do that. And also turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you for tuning in. and see you in the next video. Bye.